right? Model code of conduct. Right now, elections are happening in few states like Maharashtra. So let us see about what is this model code of conduct and how it has been evolved over a period of time, and what is its legal status, and how an election commission of India will implement the rules of the model code of conduct during the election process. Right, first we will see the history. In India, actually it started in 1960. For the first time, the model code of conduct is introduced in the Kerala elections by the Election Commission of India in 1960. So it became particularly significant after 1968-69 elections, when the Election Commission of India began to actively involve its enforcement in nationwide. If you can see the objective of this model code of conduct, the main objective is free and fair election. Right? Free and fair election. How the free and fair elections will be conducted? By establishing ethical guidelines for the political parties and also to the candidates, preventing any kind of the practices like hate speech or bribery, right, or any other illegal activities. Even if you are in government, you should not use the government machinery during your election campaigns. For example, a prime minister is there. When the prime minister is attending to the political event, it should be different. When the prime minister is addressing the gather as a prime minister of India to its people, it should be a different. So it is clearly telling that you should not use the governmental machinery and you should not misuse it for the election campaigns. And one more thing here you have to remember is this model code of conduct is the voluntary framework, which means that it does not have any kind of the standing backup from the parliament or the constitution. It just derives its authority from the consensus among the political parties and also moral persuasion by the Election Commission of India. So it does not have any statutory regulation. So please note down this also. It's don't have any statutory backup. Don't have any statutory backup. Now also there is no direct legal penalties also is included. So as the MCC does not have any kind of the statutory provision, somebody who is violating this MCC also is not drawing into any kind of the legal penalties, because since the model code of conduct itself is not codified in law, the violations do not directly lead to legal penalties or court actions. However, the Election Commission of India has powers under existing laws such as Representation of Peoples Act 1951 and also Indian Penal Code 1860. During the Election Commission of India has right to use these two acts, and also it can act accordingly on the people who are violating these model code of conducts. And it is most of the time we can observe this model code of conduct, the enforcement through Election Commission of India powers only, because while the MCC is not enforceable in the courts, the Election Commission of India can take remedial measures. They can issue first initially warnings, and after that they can also order removal of officials from their duties. Even in newspapers also you may heard so many kind of events that particular officer was removed by the Election Commission of India, particular officer was moved from one location to the another location during the election campaign. All those decisions generally which will be followed and which will be issued by the Election Commission of India, because Election Commission of India has an intelligence in such a way that if any government officer is working very closely to the government and he is not being neutral during the conducting of the elections, generally it will be they will transfer those type of officers and they will relax some of the authorities for those type of the officers. So because based on that intelligence only, the Election Commission of India will take that type of calls, but those type of calls will not be challenged in the court, in the Indian courts, because Election Commission of India has absolutely every right to implement those things to conduct fair and fair elections, because the institution itself is a constitutional body which is established under Article 324 of the Indian Constitution. Now we will see that some of the important issues with respect to the model code of conduct, because it has some efficiency and also it has some criticism. So let us see that in which situations the model code of conduct is facing criticism, in which situations it was very much efficient. The first and foremost criticism we can talk about is selective enforcement. Selective enforcement, which means that the Election Commission of India is enforcing this model code of conduct only to the particular parties, not to all the parties. See, the more common sense here is the Election Commission of India or the other election commissioners in the batch, they will be appointed by the government only. After appointment, generally their removal is to be very difficult. But during the appointment, obviously the political party has its own policy to select the Election Commission of India. If any election commissioner is appointed in that basis, that election commissioner will show some favoritism to that particular political party. So during that case, what will happen was his scrutiny over that political party and that political activities will be very minimal in nature, and his actions against other political parties are to be very tough in nature. So this kind of the misbalance. So because the enforcement is to be very selective in nature, it is not expected to be equal. So it is expected to be equal, but it is not equal. So that is one of the criticism. The second criticism is it is a legal framework limitation. As we already told that it has no statutory backup, which means that it is not an act of the parliament or it does not have any mention in the Constitution of India. So the MCC is not legally a binding document. It is just a set of guidelines with moral and administrative authority. So that's why the critics argue this limits on the Election Commission's ability to enforce its provision effectively. The violations often results in warnings or temporary bans rather than legal actions. Because if any candidate or party is crossing the line, there is no possibility for the Election Commission of India to take any legal action. Maximum it will do is it will do warning. Maximum it can do is it can ban their political campaign for the next 24 hours, 48 hours, like that. So what somebody is expected is those parties or candidates who are crossing the model code of conduct, they should be legally punishable. If we want to implement this provision, first the MCC should have a statutory backup. But what is the issue here? Again, if you want to get the statutory backup, it should be approved with the parliament only. Again, this parliament is the combination of the people who are elected by the elected representatives. Those elected representatives knows that what will happen if they can give the statutory backup to the model code of conduct. So parliament is also not considering any kind of the parliament is not doing any attempt to make this model code of conduct as to give the model code of conduct a statutory backup. Even for example, if the political party who is in the power, if they don't want to give the statutory backup to this model code of conduct, that's fine. But even in the opposition parties, they are also not giving any kind of the bill. They are not introducing any bill to give the statutory status to this model code of conduct, which means that we can understand altogether both any kind of the party is not coming forward to give the statutory status to the MCC, because once if this statutory backup was given, it gives enormous amount of the powers to the Election Commission of India. So right now it does not have a statutory backup. That is one of the criticism. The third one is challenges in regulating digital campaigns. Challenges in regulating digital campaigns. Actually, when this model code of conduct guidelines was drafted, it was drafted long time ago. By that time, this much penetration of digital technologies are not there. But we know that currently the digital technologies are penetrated like anything. So even at nook and corner of the nation, if you can go and observe that every person has a mobile in that, and they have some kind of the social media platform is installed in their mobile. So you can control this kind of generally the MCC is largely guiding the principles with respect to the non-digital campaigns, but not the digital campaigns. Even the identifying the digital campaigns and taking an action is also very difficult. For example, an YouTuber uploading about some hate speech at 7 o'clock in the morning, and he deleted it at 10 o'clock in the morning. So 3 hours already the hate speech was circulated. And if the MCC, if the Election Commission of India want to take an action, already the content was deleted. And this is a big problem for the Election Commission of India, how to handle these situations. So this has definitely posing a challenges for the Election Commission of India in handling these type of the digital campaigns. The fourth and important thing is freebies and populist promises. Now we are telling that generally offering money for an vote, so note for the vote is almost like it is like a corruption, we should not encourage. That is absolutely fine. But the thing is, what about the freebies? Because when the election political parties, when they are formulating their election manifestos, they are giving some freebies. If we are coming into the power, these freebies will be given. Now what the problem here is, judging the Election Commission of India is not in a position to judge whether those kind of the freebies is ultra amount to the pre-corruptions or not. So the question here is, now if I am going to win in this election, I am going to give you, for example, 1 gram of gold. Which means what? If I come into the power, you will get 1 gram of gold. Previously, what will happen? Vote for the note. I will give you 1 gram of gold and you can vote for me. Now the new trend was, if you give me power, I will give 1 gram of gold. Now the Election Commission of India is able to handle this case. But what about this kind of the cases? So we don't have any kind of the provision. So we need to see what should be done even in this type of circumstances also. The other foremost important criticism is role of the opinion and exit polls. Opinion and exit polls. Now, even though currently we have certain guidelines to formulate this opinion and exit polls, and also the model code of conduct restricts the publication of the opinion and exit polls during the certain periods only. But the media outlets and digital platforms, they sometimes circumvent these rules by publishing disguised predictions, and this type of the predictions unnecessarily went into the people and public pulse, and the entire public is in a position to believe that something miracle will happen. For example, you can take the AP elections in 2004, 2019 and 2024. In 2019, a wave of one of the political party came into the picture. Now everybody starts to believe that, okay, fine, this party will come into the picture. Exactly, that party only came into the picture. Even in 2024 elections, there is a wave that this political party may win. So maybe this was created during the because of the different reasons, but 100% sure there is a digital campaigns are happening and underlying reasons are there, and in the name of the opinion polls, in the name of the exit polls, they're indirectly influencing the voters' behavior. Maybe this time this party comes into the political pressure, this political party will comes into the power. So this kind of the predictions generally the Election Commission of India is not in a position to control. So that is also biggest problem. Now we can see some of the landmark Supreme Court cases on model code of conduct. The first case we will discuss about is Subramaniam Balaji versus State of Tamil Nadu. This case was happened in 2013. In this case, the court addressed the issue of the political parties making election promises, such as distributing freebies and their potential to distort the democratic process. The court also directed the Election Commission of India to develop a specific guidelines under the Model Code of Conduct to regulate such promises. We already just now discussed. You can give the promises or assurance to the people, but that assurance should be in the name of the development, not in the model of the freebies. So in this case, when this case was happened when when Tamil Nadu government is distributing TVs to the people, and one of the political party they told like that, if we are coming into the power, one color TV will be given to your house. It is almost like a corruption only. So that's the reason why this case, the Subramaniam Balaji versus State of Tamil Nadu, the Supreme Court vehemently opposed this kind of the election manifesto. If we are winning, we can give the color TV. Those kind of thing almost amount to the bribe and corruption only. So the court urged the Election Commission of India to develop a specific guidelines under MCC only. It is again telling about under MCC to regulate such promises. But the question here is, when we are framing such type of the guidelines under MCC, the MCC itself is not in a position to have any legal backup. Obviously, the rules which are formed under MCC also, they also does not have any legal backup. This is the biggest question mark. So to address all these issues, the only thing what we have to do is give some kind of the statutory backup to the MCC so that it will be much more efficient. So this case also highlighted the Model Code of Conduct's role in preventing undue influence on voters and ensuring an ethical and free and fair election practices. And we have one more noted case is there, Election Commission of India versus State of Haryana, which was happened in 1996. Here also, Actually, what is the case here is the state government of Haryana, they introduced one government policy during the elections period. The Election Commission of India immediately asked the state of Haryana to withdraw any kind of the information about that policy. But the state of Haryana is arguing that this policy is very much beneficial to the farming community, and also it is very much important to the people who are residing in that region. But the Election Commission of India says that no, it is almost like equivalent to the bribe and corruption only. That policy should not be implemented at this point of time. You should immediately remove that content. That's what the Election Commission of India directed the state government of Haryana. So in this case, the court upheld the Election Commission of India authority to enforce the Model Code of Conduct, and also it emphasized its powers to take measures like differing government policies and also could influence the elections. So this judgment reinforced the Election Commission of India's role in ensuring neutrality and impartiality during elections. So the Supreme Court of India is supported Election Commission of India rather than it is supported the state government of Haryana. Okay, in these two cases you observe, so the Supreme Court is giving lot of importance to the Election Commission of India guidelines. The third important case is Sushmita Dev versus Election Commission of India. It was happened recently in 2019 only. Actually, this Sushmita Dev, she is complaining to the Supreme Court in such a way that the Election Commission of India is not taking actions immediately when the incident was happened. She quoted that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi used certain kind of the objective material during his election campaigns. He used the armed forces images. He used the hate speech is one of the measure. He addressed the communities of the Hindu people. So she highlighted all these things, and she approached the Supreme Court that even this also amounts to the against to the rules of the MCC. Then in this case, the Supreme Court examined the alleged MCC violations by the prominent leaders, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and it is clearly highlighted the Election Commission of India's delay in addressing the complaints of this kind of hate speech and use of armed forces images. So this time the Supreme Court clearly directed Election Commission of India, this type of the delay is not acceptable, and the Supreme Court also clearly says that implementing MCC roles should be neutral, and it should not be favored to one political party, and it should not be disadvantaged to another political party. Even though the person who is involving in the incident is a prime minister or a prominent leader, it does not matter. You must implement the MCC rules for every person individually and in the similar way. The Election Commission of this time the Supreme Court clearly says to the Election Commission of India, don't delay these type of the things, and these type of delays are not acceptable. So which means that the Supreme Court also is in line with MCC only, and it is clearly saying to the Election Commission of India. So from this entire article we can summarize few things. Number one, MCC does not have a statutory backup. Number two, even though MCC does not have a statutory backup, the Election Commission of India, through the Representation of Peoples Act 1951 and under the article number 324 of the Constitution, has enough powers to handle any kind of the misbalances in the election in the process of conduction of elections. Number three, even Supreme Court also is in favor of the Model Code of Conduct procedure. The Supreme Court is not inclined towards the government, is not inclined towards the Election Commission of India. It is very much concerned about the implementation of the Model Code of Conduct. The fourth one, there is some kind of the delays are happening from the Election Commission of India in handling certain cases, especially some of the cases like digital campaigns are currently unregulated. The fourth and foremost important summary what we have to give here is, there is an urgent need to provide the statutory backup to the Model Code of the Conduct. If we can provide the statutory backup to this, most of these problems will be solved, and Election Commission of India will be in a position to act in a vehement position, and even the people can touch the Supreme Court or High Court gates also if any kind of the violations were happened, if the Election Commission of India is not in a position to take any action. As currently MCC does not have any backup, whatever the actions taken by the Election Commission of India, that will be justifiable, and final authority to take those calls is also Election Commission of India, not the Supreme Court. But once if the MCC is getting the statutory backup, If the Election Commission of India is not able to implement this MCC effectively, the citizen of this nation can go to the Supreme Court and High Court. So that advantage also will be there if we are giving a statutory status to the Model Code of the Conduct. So this should be done immediately. So this is about the Model Code of the Conduct.